Welcome to Wonderland Stories. Today we bring you the magical tale of kindness, bravery, and true friendship, the story of Snow White. Let's begin. Once upon a time, in a faraway kingdom surrounded by tall mountains and endless green forests, there lived a gentle and graceful queen. On a snowy winter's day, as she worked by her window, she pricked her finger with a needle, and 3 drops of blood fell upon the snow. Looking at the bright red drops on the white snow, the queen whispered, "I wish for a child as white as snow, as red as blood, and as black as the ebony wood of this window frame." Months passed, and her wish came true. A baby girl was born, her skin white as snow, lips red as a rose, and hair black as ebony. They named her Snow White. Sadly, the queen grew ill and passed away when Snow White was still a little baby. The king, though heartbroken, remarried, hoping to give his daughter a loving mother. But the new queen was very different. She was beautiful, yes, but proud, vain, and unkind. She owned a magical mirror, and every day she would stand before it and ask, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" And the mirror always replied, "You, my queen, are the fairest of them all." Snow White grew into a kind-hearted young girl, loved by everyone in the kingdom for her gentle nature. She helped the poor, played with the children, and treated every animal with care. But her stepmother, the queen, grew jealous as she watched Snow White's beauty blossom. One day, the queen asked her mirror the same question as always. But this time, the mirror replied, "My queen, you are fair, it is true, but Snow White is fairer than you." The queen's heart burned with jealousy. She called a huntsman and ordered, "Take Snow White deep into the forest. Get rid of her, and bring me proof that she will trouble me no more." The huntsman, though loyal to the queen, could not harm innocent Snow White. As they walked into the deep woods, Snow White smiled and chatted, not knowing her fate. Finally, the huntsman dropped to his knees. "Dear princess, I cannot harm you. Run far into the forest and never return to the castle. The queen wishes you gone." Terrified, Snow White fled into the forest. The trees looked dark and frightening, and strange sounds filled the air. But after running for hours, she stumbled upon a little cottage with a sloping roof and tiny windows. Curious and exhausted, she peeked inside. Everything was small, neat, and tidy: tiny chairs, tiny dishes, and tiny beds. Snow White, weary from her journey, ate a little bread and soup she found, then curled up across the 7 small beds and fell fast asleep. When night fell, the owners of the cottage returned. They were 7 dwarfs, hardworking miners who spent their days in the mountains digging for gems. They entered and were surprised to see someone asleep inside their home. "Who is this girl?" whispered one dwarf. "She looks so peaceful," said another. Snow White awoke and introduced herself. She told them her story, the jealous queen, the huntsman, and her escape. The kind dwarfs felt sympathy for her and said, "Stay with us, dear Snow White. You can keep our home tidy while we work in the mines, and in return, we will protect you." Grateful, Snow White agreed. Days passed, and she lived happily with the dwarfs, filling their cottage with laughter and warmth. But far away in the castle, the queen once again asked her mirror, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" To her horror, the mirror answered, "Snow White, who lives with the 7 dwarfs, is still the fairest of them all." Enraged, the queen decided to finish Snow White herself. Disguising herself as an old peddler woman, she prepared a poisoned lace. She traveled through the forest and arrived at the dwarf's cottage. "Lovely girl, "Would you like a beautiful lace for your dress?" the old woman croaked. Snow White, innocent and trusting, let her in. The queen tightened the lace so cruelly that Snow White fell unconscious. Luckily, when the dwarfs returned, they quickly loosened the lace, and Snow White awoke. "Be careful, dear Snow White," they warned. "The queen will stop at nothing to harm you. Never let anyone inside when we're away." The queen tried again. This time, she disguised herself as a comb seller, offering Snow White a beautiful, shiny comb. But the comb was poisoned. The moment Snow White placed it in her hair, she collapsed. Once more, the dwarfs returned just in time, removing the comb and saving her life. Still, the queen would not give up. For her third attempt, she prepared the most dangerous trick of all, a poisoned apple. One bite of the apple would put Snow White into a sleep like death, from which she could never awaken. Disguised as a kindly old farmer's wife, the queen approached the cottage once more. "Sweet child," she said, "I've brought you a delicious apple. Here, taste it." Snow White hesitated, remembering the dwarf's warnings. But the old woman cut the apple in two, offering her the red half while eating the white half herself. What Snow White didn't know was that only the red side was poisoned. Trusting at last, Snow White bit into the apple. At once, she fell to the ground, her eyes closing as if in eternal sleep. When the dwarfs returned, they found her still and silent. Nothing they did could awaken her. Heartbroken, they placed her in a glass coffin in the forest, where the birds and animals came to mourn her. Her beauty never faded, and it seemed as if she were only sleeping. Lodged in Snow White's throat was dislodged. Her eyes fluttered open. Snow White gasped for breath and looked around. The prince and the dwarfs were overjoyed. "Where am I?" she asked softly. "You are safe, dear Snow White," the dwarfs cried. The prince knelt and said, "I love you with all my heart. Will you come with me to my castle and be my queen?" Snow White, grateful and happy, agreed. Together, they returned to the prince's kingdom, where they were married in a grand celebration. The dwarfs were honored guests, and the whole land rejoiced. As for the evil queen, when she asked her mirror once more, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" the mirror replied, "Snow White, the kind and true, is fairest of them all." Overcome with rage and shame, the queen's vanity consumed her, and she disappeared, never to trouble Snow White again. Snow White and her prince lived happily ever after, ruling with kindness and compassion. And the memory of the 7 dwarfs, who once saved her life, remained in her heart forever. Thank you for listening to this magical tale of Snow White. Remember, true beauty shines from kindness, courage, and love. Join us again for more enchanting adventures here on Wonderland Stories. One day, a kind prince from a neighboring kingdom passed through the forest. He saw the glass coffin and the sleeping maiden within. Struck by her beauty and touched by the dwarf's love for her, he said, "I must take this maiden with me to my castle, for she is too precious to remain here forgotten." The dwarfs, though sorrowful, agreed, for they saw the prince's sincerity. As the coffin was lifted, one of the prince's servants stumbled, and the piece of poisoned apple